Beauty could taste blood on her lips before she even felt the sting of the slap. Her head snapped to the side, her cheek already throbbing, but she did not cry. She had learned that tears only made him angrier. Do you want to ruin everything? Minute J's voice thundered through the apartment. His tall frame loomed over her, veins rising in his neck. Our wedding is tomorrow, Beauty. Tomorrow. And you want to show up looking like this? He grabbed her chin, forcing her to look into his sharp Korean eyes. The smell of alcohol burned her nose as he sneered. Use your makeup. Cover it. No one must know you're a stupid, ungrateful woman who doesn't know her place. Her hands trembled as she touched the swelling on her face. Tomorrow, she was supposed to wear white. Tomorrow, she was supposed to vow forever to the man who had been her nightmare for 3 long years. Why had she stayed? Why hadn't she run when the first slap landed? When the first insult cut through her heart? Because Minute J had promised her the world. Because when she first arrived in Seoul as a young black woman chasing dreams, he was the only one who reached out, who made her feel like she belonged. He clothed her when she was broke, fed her when she had nothing, whispered love into her ears when loneliness was her only friend. But every gift had strings. Every smile had a shadow. And little by little, he cut away her confidence, her friendships, her freedom, until all she had was him. Don't test me, Beauty, Minute J hissed, shoving her back onto the couch. His hand tightened around her wrist, the weight of his control suffocating her. Tomorrow, you'll walk down that aisle. You'll smile for the cameras. You'll make me look like the perfect man. And if you dare embarrass me. He leaned close, his whisper colder than the winter rain outside. I'll make sure you regret ever being born. Her heart pounded in her chest. The walls felt smaller, her world darker. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice she thought had died long ago whispered, enough. The taste of vodka was bitter, but it was better than the taste of blood. Beauty tipped the glass back and let the fire burn down her throat, her eyes staring blankly at the wall. Her swollen cheek throbbed, her arms ached, but the alcohol blurred it all, if only for a moment. On the table in front of her lay tomorrow's wedding dress, the white lace mocking her. She imagined walking down that aisle with Minute J's hand gripping hers like a shackle, imagined the endless years of pain waiting for her if she said I do. Tears slid down her face before she even realized she was crying. I can't do this, she thought, gripping the glass tighter. I can't spend the rest of my life with him. I'd rather die than marry him. Somewhere between her 4th and 5th drink, courage found her. Staggering to her feet, she grabbed her purse and keys. Her head spun, but her mind screamed a single truth, run. And so she did. Out of the apartment, down the dark streets of Seoul, barefoot, mascara running, her chest tight with a mix of fear and freedom. She didn't know where she was going, only that every step took her farther from Minute J. By the time she stumbled into a glittering skyscraper, her vision was hazy. She only wanted a place to hide, a corner where her past couldn't reach her. But instead, she found herself in a room filled with men in sharp suits, their cold eyes narrowing the moment they saw her. At the center of it all sat a man in black, his presence commanding, his face carved from stone. His gaze locked on her, sharp as a blade. Who is this? Someone barked. But before she could retreat, strong hands guided her forward, pushing papers into her trembling hands. Voices overlapped, fast and impatient. She's here. Good. Sign it. Quickly, before the deal collapses. The boss won't wait. Her head spun. She tried to speak, but the words tangled on her tongue. A pen was shoved into her hand, and in her drunken haze, all she saw was her escape, her chance to disappear into anything but tomorrow's wedding. So she signed. A bold signature scrawled across paper she couldn't read. The room fell silent for a moment, and then the man in black leaned back in his chair, smirking. His voice was smooth, dangerous. Well then, he said, eyes never leaving her. It's official. Beauty blinked, swaying on her feet, not fully grasping what she had just done. But the next morning, when sunlight pierced her eyes and the hangover throbbed in her skull, she found herself lying in a luxurious room she didn't recognize. On the nightstand lay the papers she had signed, stamped and sealed. Her blood ran cold as she read the bold letters. Marriage certificate. Her name was there. And beside it, Kim Taehun. The name every whisper in Seoul feared. The underworld king. This was not her apartment. This was not her life. Kim Taehun? Her heart stopped. She had heard that name whispered like a curse across the city. The underworld king. A man who controlled empires with blood and money. A man even politicians feared. The door opened with a low creak. Her stomach knotted as he walked in. Tall. Immaculate. A black shirt unbuttoned at the top, revealing his hot body. His eyes, sharp, cold, assessing, locked on her. So, Taehun said, his voice smooth but laced with arrogance, the woman who stumbled into my deal last night is awake. Beauty clutched the sheets to her chest, her voice unsteady. What did I sign? He smirked, tossing a glance at the certificate in her hand. Your fate. Her breathing hitched. Marriage? This has to be a mistake. Taehun stepped closer, his presence suffocating. His lips curved into a cruel smile. A mistake? No, Beauty Adeyemi. It's legal. It's binding. And whether you like it or not, he leaned down, his voice dropping to a whisper against her ear. You are mine now. Her pulse raced, anger clashing with fear. You think I'll accept this? You don't even know me. His laugh was low, mocking. And you think I wanted to? Do you know how many women in Korea, America, Africa would beg for this position? Out of all of them, they bring me you. His gaze swept over her bruised cheek, her messy hair, her trembling hands. A broken little runaway with nothing to offer. The words cut deeper than Minute J's fists ever had, but instead of tears, fire sparked in Beauty's eyes. I'd rather be nothing, she spat, her voice shaking but steady, than belong to a man like you. The room grew heavy with silence. Then his lips curved again, slower this time, dangerous. Beauty's stomach twisted, but deep inside, she knew one thing, she had escaped one monster only to fall into the hands of another. Only this one was far more dangerous. The marriage certificate lay on the nightstand like a curse, the bold letters taunting her. She shoved it into the drawer, refusing to look at it again. She pulled on her clothes from the night before and slipped out of the room, her heart hammering. The penthouse was massive, high ceilings, polished floors, walls of glass overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. But the beauty of it only made her feel smaller, like a prisoner in a golden cage. She found the elevator and pressed the button frantically. The doors slid open, and her heart leapt, until she froze. Two tall men in black suits stood inside, their faces like stone. Guns bulged beneath their jackets. One of them looked her up and down, unimpressed. Going somewhere, Mrs. Kim. The name hit her like a slap. Mrs. Kim. She forced a shaky smile. I just need some air. I'm leaving. The other man's voice was flat. No one leaves without the boss's permission. Panic clawed at her chest. She backed away, turning on her heel, trying another hallway, another door. Every exit was the same, guarded, locked, impossible. Finally, she stumbled into a grand office. And there he was. Kim Taehun. He sat behind a sleek desk, a glass of whiskey in his hand, dark eyes watching her as though he had been expecting this moment. His lips curled into a smirk. Escape already, he drawled. You didn't even last a morning. Her fists clenched at her sides. You can't keep me here. This marriage isn't real. I didn't know what I was signing. Taehun leaned back in his chair, amused. The government doesn't care what you knew. The ink is dry, Beauty. You're legally mine. I'm not yours, she spat. I will never be yours. You are not mine as a woman, you are here to work for me and take deals. I don't see you as a woman, I will never see you as one, because you are not my type of meat. He glared at her as if she doesn't matter. Beauty stood there, her chest breathing heavily. I hate men, I hate that men exist. For a moment, his eyes darkened, something sharp and dangerous flickering there. I'm really not interested in your opinion, Beauty. Then he rose from the chair, slow and deliberate, until he stood in front of her. His presence filled the room, suffocating. Let me go, she uttered sternly. You think you have a choice, he said softly, his tone deadly calm. But here's the truth, the moment you sign that paper, your life stopped being yours. You belong to me, Beauty Adeyemi. You walk when I say walk. You breathe when I say breathe. And if you try to run... He leaned closer, his whisper chilling against her ear. I'll show you what it means to cross the King of Shadows. Her knees threatened to give way, but she lifted her chin, fire burning through her fear. Do your worst. I'd rather fight you than be your puppet. For the first time, Taehun's smile faltered. Then slowly, he chuckled, stepping back. Good, he murmured, eyes gleaming. I was starting to think this marriage might bore me. Prove me wrong, Mrs. Kim. Beauty's chest heaved as the guards closed the office doors behind her. She was trapped. Truly trapped. And somewhere deep inside, she realized her nightmare had only just begun. The wedding hall had been decorated with white lilies. Guests whispered in confusion, their eyes darting to the clock as minutes turned into hours. The groom stood stiff at the altar, his fists clenched at his sides. Minute J's bride never came. Days later, the flowers had withered, but his rage had not. His apartment walls bore the evidence of his fury: broken glass, shattered frames, overturned chairs. He had searched every corner of Seoul, stormed through hotels, called every contact he had. Beauty had vanished. Find her, Minute J hissed to his men, his eyes wild. I don't care how long it takes. She will regret running from me. She will crawl back on her knees. On the other side of the city, Beauty sat before a long dining table, staring at a plate of food she didn't recognize. Forks, knives, and spoons of different sizes glimmered under the light. A maid stood patiently beside her, whispering instructions. Use the smaller fork first. The knife angled this way. Gently. Yes, like that. Beauty clenched her jaw, lifting the fork awkwardly. She had never cared how people thought she should eat. Now she was being trained like some puppet, molded to fit into a world she wanted no part of. Across the room, Taehun watched. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes missed nothing. You're my wife now, he said coolly. You'll sit beside me at business dinners, international negotiations, official functions. You won't embarrass me. Beauty dropped the fork with a sharp clang. I didn't ask for this life. No, Taehun replied, stepping closer, his gaze like steel. But it's yours now. So learn. The next day, the training shifted. Beauty found herself in a private gym, her hands wrapped in bandages, her body already aching. Taehun stood before her, his sleeves rolled up, revealing ink that coiled over his forearms. Hit me, he commanded. Beauty blinked. What? Punch. Defend yourself. Show me you're not as weak as you look. Anger bubbled in her chest. Weak. That word again. She swung clumsily, her fist barely brushing his shoulder. He shook his head, catching her wrist easily, twisting it just enough to make her gasp. Too soft, he murmured. Your enemies will laugh before they kill you. She glared, yanking her hand free. Then stop talking and teach me. For the first time, his lips curved, not in a smirk, but in the faintest flicker of amusement. And so he did. He pushed her, corrected her stance, made her repeat every move until sweat drenched her skin. She fell more than she stood, but every time, she got back up, her stubbornness burning brighter than her exhaustion. At one point, she stumbled, and her sleeve slipped back, revealing the faint scars on her arm, long, jagged reminders of Minute J's cruelty. Taehun's eyes flickered, something sharp passing through them. But instead of mocking her, he turned away, his voice lower than before. Again, he ordered. This time, with strength. By the end of the week, stylists arrived, their hands tugging at fabrics, pinning her hair, layering her in gowns that shimmered beneath the lights. Beauty stood before the mirror, transformed, elegant, unrecognizable. She hardly recognized the woman staring back. Taehun appeared behind her reflection, his voice calm, commanding. Now you look like my wife. Beauty's chin lifted, her eyes meeting his in the mirror. Her heart still hated him, but her mind whispered her vow, never again. Never again will I let any man break me. The limousine slid through Seoul's glittering night, the city lights blurring past the tinted glass. Beauty sat stiffly in her seat, her palms damp against the silk of her gown. The emerald dress clung to her curves, the diamonds at her ears catching the glow of the car's interior lights. The stylist had done wonders, her skin glowed, her hair fell in soft waves, but inside, she still felt like the girl who had cried herself to sleep in a cramped apartment just days ago. Beside her, Taehun adjusted the cufflinks on his black suit, his expression unreadable. He hadn't spoken much since she stepped out of the dressing room hours earlier. Only one sentence, sharp and cold. Don't do anything stupid tonight. Now, as the car slowed in front of the towering glass hotel, Beauty's stomach twisted. Paparazzi flashes exploded against the windows like bursts of lightning. The moment the chauffeur opened the door, a storm of voices and cameras rushed forward. Taehun stepped out first, tall and commanding in his tailored suit. Then his hand extended toward her. For a moment, she hesitated. She didn't want his touch, didn't want this performance. But the crowd's eyes burned into her, and with a steady breath, she placed her hand in his. Gasps rippled through the crowd as she emerged. Who is she? Not one of the models. She's different. The whispers followed them up the carpeted steps. Beauty kept her chin high, refusing to let the curiosity, or the stares, break her composure. Inside, chandeliers glittered overhead, and the ballroom gleamed with gold and marble. The city's most powerful families gathered around crystal tables, champagne glasses in hand. All eyes turned as Taehun led her forward. Chairman Park, an older man, greeted, his smile tight. His gaze slid to Beauty, assessing her like an exotic artifact. And this must be your new wife. Taehun's lips curved into a faint, practiced smile. Yes. Meet Beauty. The man chuckled, though his eyes were sharp. Unexpected. Very unexpected. You've always had a taste for the finest, Taehun, but this is unique. Motherfucking racists, she muttered under her breath. Beauty's jaw tightened. She knew a hidden insult when she heard one. Taehun's grip on her waist urged her to stay silent. But she refused. Her voice rang clear, soft but steady. Unique is just another word for someone you'll never forget. The man blinked, momentarily startled. Then laughter erupted from the circle, though it carried a hint of respect. Taehun's fingers tightened against her side, his warning clear. But when Beauty glanced at him, his expression was unreadable, except for the faint flicker in his eyes. The rest of the evening played out like a battle of wills. Beauty endured the fake smiles, the probing questions, the side glances filled with judgment. Each time she spoke, she did so with a quiet strength that silenced the whispers, forcing people to listen. By the time the event ended, Beauty's feet ached in her heels, but her spirit burned with a strange, stubborn fire. The limousine was silent on the ride back. She could feel Taehun's gaze on her, heavy, unreadable. Finally, he spoke. You disobeyed me. She turned her head, meeting his stare without flinching. I defended myself. I won't stand there like a puppet while people treat me like I don't belong. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. For a long moment, she thought he might lash out. But instead, he leaned back against the seat, his lips curling into something dark. Almost amused. You're playing a dangerous game, Beauty. She looked out the window, her voice quiet but steady. I've been in danger my whole life. You're not the first man to scare me. His smirk faltered, his eyes darkening at her words. But he said nothing more. Outside, the city lights blurred past again. Inside the car, an unspoken war burned between them, his need for control, and her vow never to bow again. The city slept, but Minute J did not. He sat in the dark of his apartment, a half-empty bottle of soju on the table beside him, his knuckles raw from slamming them against the wall. His phone glowed in his hand, the picture of Beauty smiling back at him from an old photograph. She was supposed to be mine. Rumors had reached him, whispers in bars, murmurs in alleyways. Beauty had been seen beside Taehun, Seoul's most feared businessman. At first Minute J had laughed, dismissing it as impossible. But the more he dug, the clearer the truth became. She was with him. Married, they said. Married to the one man no one dared to cross. Minute J's lips twisted into a bitter sneer. No, he muttered. She belongs to me. No one takes what's mine. His fists clenched. If he had to rip her out of Taehun's world, he would, even if it killed him. Meanwhile, in Taehun's mansion, the night was silent, until a muffled cry pierced the air. Beauty tossed in her bed, her forehead damp with sweat. In her dream, Minute J's hands were on her again, rough, unrelenting. His voice thundered in her head. You think you can leave me? You're nothing without me. Nothing. She whimpered, thrashing against invisible chains. Stop, please, stop. Her cry echoed through the hall. Taehun, returning late from a meeting, froze. The sound cut through him in a way he couldn't explain. Without thinking, he pushed her bedroom door open. The room was dim, moonlight spilling across the sheets. Beauty's face twisted in agony as she cried out, her fists clutching the blanket. Taehun approached slowly. Beauty. She didn't wake. Her breathing was ragged, her body trembling. For a man who had spent his life surrounded by violence, this sight unsettled him in a way bullets and knives never had. "Wake up," he said more firmly, sitting on the edge of the bed. His hand reached out, hesitant, before resting gently on her shoulder. Her eyes flew open. She gasped, sitting upright, chest heaving as if she had run for miles. Her eyes darted around until they landed on him. "Get out," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Just get out." But Taehun didn't move. He studied her pale face, the tears still streaking down her cheeks. Something inside him resisted leaving her like this. Instead, he pulled the blanket higher over her trembling frame. "You're safe here. No one can touch you." "I said get out," she repeated, though her voice cracked. His hand, firm yet strangely gentle, brushed against her arm in a slow, steady motion, like he was calming a frightened child. "Sleep." She shook her head weakly, trying to push him away. But the warmth of his touch, the steadiness in his presence, overpowered the storm still raging inside her. Her breath slowed. Her eyelids grew heavy. And to her own surprise, she leaned unconsciously closer, her head tilting toward his shoulder before sleep claimed her again. Taehun stayed still, staring down at her sleeping form. It was the first time he stared at her for more than 30 seconds. He should have left. He should have walked out the moment she told him to. But instead, he sat there in silence, watching her sleep, his hand not leaving her arm. The lounge was alive with glittering chandeliers, the low hum of jazz, and the scent of money. Seoul's richest men gathered here, business sharks, politicians, and men whose fortunes were built in shadows. At the center of it all sat Taehun, in his usual spot, the corner booth draped in velvet, where no one dared disturb him unless invited. His partners laughed, glasses clinked, women draped themselves over shoulders. Every Thursday night was the same. Taehun never lacked company. Tonight was no different, until it was. A tall woman with porcelain skin, her red dress clinging like a second skin, slid into the booth beside him. Her perfume was intoxicating, her lips curved in a perfect smile. She leaned close, her fingers tracing his wrist. "Come upstairs with me," she whispered. Normally, he wouldn't have hesitated. Desire was never complicated for him. It was transactional, fleeting, nothing more than fire to burn out the cold. He followed her without a second thought. But tonight, he found himself in the hotel bedroom, her body pressed against his, heat radiating, her mouth on his neck. She was flawless, alluring, every man's fantasy. And yet, he felt nothing. His hands froze at her waist. His eyes, though open, weren't on her. They saw something else entirely. Beauty. Her trembling hands clutching her blanket. Her broken voice whispering, "Get out." The way her breathing softened against him when she finally drifted back to sleep. Her face, peaceful, unguarded, flashed before him like a brand he couldn't shake. "Why?" he muttered under his breath. "What was that?" the woman asked, her lips grazing his jaw. He pushed her away suddenly, his voice sharper than he intended. "Get dressed." She blinked, startled. "What? But you." "I said leave." The authority in his tone left no room for argument. She grabbed her purse, muttering curses as she stormed out. The door slammed, leaving Taehun alone in the silence of the luxurious suite. He sat on the edge of the bed, running a hand through his hair, his chest heavy with an emotion he couldn't name. This wasn't him. He didn't care. He didn't think about women after the lights went out. They were bodies, not faces. Voices, not names. So why couldn't he get rid of the sound of her soft sobs echoing in his ears? Why did her face linger in his mind like a stubborn scar? Taehun clenched his jaw, furious with himself. He was Taehun, the man who owned the city, who feared nothing and loved no one. And yet, for the first time, his body refused every temptation except the memory of a woman who hated him. Beauty. The drive back from the business deal was silent. The city lights flickered across the tinted windows, casting fleeting shadows over Beauty's face. She stared out at Seoul's skyline, her arms folded tight against her chest. Taehun leaned back in his seat, his sharp eyes flicking to her every now and then. Something about her unsettled him. She wasn't radiant tonight, her usual quiet defiance was dulled. Her skin looked pale against her dress, and the shadows beneath her eyes made her appear almost fragile. The moment they stepped into the mansion, his voice cut through the silence. "What was that?" Beauty blinked, confused. What was what? He turned to her fully now, his jaw tightening. You. Out there. Dull. Empty. Do you realize who I am? Do you realize what it means to stand beside me? Every woman would die for the chance to walk into that deal at my side, and you couldn't even manage to look the part. You don't get to disgrace me. Her lips parted in shock. For a moment, silence stretched between them, then something snapped inside her. Disgrace you? Her voice cracked like lightning. Do you think I care about impressing your world? I haven't been able to sleep for days. Every time I close my eyes, he's there, beating me, cursing me, reminding me of what I lived through for 3 years. Her chest rose and fell as tears threatened to spill. You want me flawless? Then erase the nightmares that haunt me every night. She yapped breathlessly, not knowing how and why she confessed her suffering to him. Which man did all that to you? Taehun froze. Her words struck like a knife, slicing through his arrogance. He had seen stubbornness in her before, but never this raw, trembling vulnerability. For the briefest second, he didn't know what to say. None of your business, she slammed at him. Then his voice hardened again, though softer this time, almost restrained. Enough. Pack your things. Beauty's brows knitted. What? You'll move into my room tonight. Her heart skipped. No. It wasn't a request. His tone was sharp, commanding. You will sleep where I tell you to. You will obey every instruction I give. She laughed bitterly, though her voice shook. I'd rather be homeless than share a room with you. Taehun stepped closer, his towering frame casting a shadow over her. His eyes darkened, unreadable. You're my wife, whether you like it or not. And until this contract ends, you'll do as I say. If I tell you to sleep in my room, then that's where you'll sleep. Don't test me, Beauty. You won't win. She swallowed hard, every nerve in her body screaming at her to resist. But her exhaustion betrayed her. Her body was tired of the nightmares, tired of the endless fear. Her fists clenched at her side. Fine, she spat, her voice dripping with defiance. But don't think for a second that sharing a room with you means I've accepted you. Taehun's gaze lingered on her, a dangerous mixture of fury and fascination. We'll see. That night, Beauty reluctantly packed her things and entered Taehun's room. It was larger than her entire home back in Africa, cold and intimidating, just like him. She curled on the far edge of the massive bed, her back to him, clutching the blanket like armor. Taehun stood by the window, watching the city lights, his glass of whiskey untouched. He knew he wouldn't be sleeping either, not because of business, but because of the woman breathing softly on the other side of his bed. The night was thick with tension as the black limousine slid to a stop outside an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Seoul. Taehun's men fanned out, sharp suits hiding sharper weapons. Beauty followed him inside, her emerald dress brushing against the cold concrete floor, her heels clicking like warning bells in the silence. She didn't want to be here, but she had no choice. She was his wife now, at least on paper, and wives were expected to stand beside their husbands. Even if that husband was the king of shadows. Inside, the rival syndicate sat waiting. Men in dark coats, faces hard as steel, smiles too sharp to be genuine. Taehun's eyes narrowed as he slid into his seat at the long steel table, his hand resting lightly on Beauty's lower back, a silent command for her to stay close. The negotiations began with fake pleasantries, words dripping with hidden daggers. Beauty's heart raced. She didn't understand the coded language of power and threats, but she could feel the storm gathering. Then it happened. One wrong word. One raised voice. And the room erupted. Gunfire split the air like thunder. Taehun's men dove for cover, weapons flashing from their jackets. Chairs overturned, bullets shattered glass. Beauty screamed, ducking instinctively, but pain lanced through her arm a moment later. A stray bullet grazed her, tearing through her skin. Blood seeped down her hand, staining the lace of her sleeve. Her cry cut through the chaos. Taehun's head whipped around, his sharp eyes widening as he saw the crimson dripping from her arm. Beauty. Without hesitation, he grabbed her, shielding her body with his own as he fired a shot toward the attackers. His men surged forward to cover him, but Taehun was already moving, carrying her in his arms as though she weighed nothing. Boss, one of his lieutenants shouted. Handle it. Taehun barked, his voice like a whip. He didn't spare another glance at the betrayal unfolding behind him. All that mattered was the trembling woman in his arms. The car engine roared as Taehun sped through the city, one hand on the wheel, the other gripping Beauty's blooded wrist. Her face was pale, her teeth clenched against the pain. "Hospital," he muttered, his jaw tight. "No." Beauty gasped, shaking her head furiously. "Not the hospital. Don't be ridiculous." His voice was sharp, clipped. "You're bleeding. You need stitches." "I said no," she snapped, tears brimming in her eyes. "I hate hospitals. I can't stand the smell, the crowds, the way it feels like death is waiting around every corner. I won't go. I'd rather die." For a moment, silence filled the car, broken only by the screech of tires as Taehun took a sharp turn. His knuckles whitened on the wheel. Then he hissed, "You stubborn brat." Her lips curved faintly despite the pain. "Then don't waste your time. Take me home." Minutes later, Taehun kicked open the mansion doors, still carrying her. He laid her down on the long leather couch, his movements rough but careful. Beauty watched him disappear for a moment, only to return with a black medical kit. When he sat beside her, his usual mask of arrogance was gone, replaced by a focused intensity. His hands, though large and calloused, moved with surprising delicacy as he cleaned the blood from her arm. Beauty hissed at the sting. "Careful." "I am being careful," he muttered. His voice was low, gruff, but his touch was tender, his thumb brushing gently against her skin as though afraid to break her. For a moment, she simply watched him. The way his brows furrowed in concentration. The way he blew softly against the wound to ease the burn of the antiseptic. The way his jaw tightened, not in anger, but in worry. It unsettled her. This was not the man who threatened her, who claimed ownership of her. This was someone else. Someone human. "Taehun, thank you," she whispered before she could stop herself. His eyes flicked up, locking onto hers. The air between them thickened. Her breath caught, her pulse racing. He was too close. Close enough for her to see the flecks of gold in his dark irises, close enough to feel the warmth of his breath against her lips. His hand lingered on her wrist longer than necessary, his thumb tracing a slow circle against her skin. Beauty's chest rose and fell, her gown slipping slightly from her shoulder, exposing the curve of her collarbone. His gaze dropped there for the briefest second, before snapping back to her face. Neither of them spoke. The silence was louder than any words, heavy with something dangerous, something forbidden. Finally, Taehun tied the bandage with a sharp tug, as if reminding himself who he was. He leaned back, exhaling hard, breaking the spell. "Allergic to hospitals," he muttered, almost to himself. Then his eyes returned to her, sharp again but softer at the edges. "You'll be the death of me, Beauty." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Good. At least then you'll know how it feels." Taehun froze, caught between fury and something else he couldn't name. The King of Shadows didn't know whether to push her away, or pull her closer. A week later, the scar on Beauty's arm had begun to fade, but the memory of that night still lingered in both their minds. The room was quiet, save for the soft hum of Taehun's laptop keys. He sat at the edge of a massive bed, his posture sharp as always, his eyes locked on numbers and deals. But he wasn't working. Not really. Because across the room, in front of the mirror, Beauty sat with her long hair cascading over her shoulders. She combed it slowly, the strands glistening under the warm light as she worked moisturizing oil into the ends. Her nightgown was satin, pale against her dark glowing skin, clinging to her curves as though the fabric worshipped her. Her reflection shifted slightly, and her hair slipped across her cheek. She tucked it back delicately, her fingers grazing her soft skin. Taehun's chest tightened. He told himself to focus on the laptop, but his eyes betrayed him. They lingered on the curve of her neck, the gentle slope of her shoulder, the way her lips parted ever so slightly when she concentrated. She was breathtaking. And for the first time, the King of Shadows was mesmerized. Beauty turned suddenly, and their eyes locked. Caught. Taehun's jaw tightened. He snapped his gaze back to the screen, typing furiously as though she wasn't even in the room. But it was too late. She had seen. A slow, knowing smile curved across her lips. She didn't need words. She had confirmation. She looked good. She smelled good. And she knew he was watching. Rising from the vanity, she walked toward him, each step unhurried, her bare feet whispering against the carpet. She stopped by the bed, leaning just close enough for the scent of her jasmine oil to slip into his senses. "I think there's something in my eye," she murmured, her voice soft, teasing. "Check it for me." Taehyun's head turned slowly. His brows furrowed, suspicious, but her wide eyes glittered with just enough innocence to disarm him. With a sigh, he placed the laptop aside and leaned in. Her face was inches from his. He tilted her chin gently, his fingers brushing her jaw as he looked into her eye. Her lashes trembled. His breath mingled with hers. Their bodies leaned closer, too close, dangerously close. And then, her nightgown strap slipped. The satin string slid down her shoulder, exposing the delicate line of her collarbone and the soft curve of her cleavage. Taehyun's eyes flickered. From her eyes, to her nose, to her lips. Something inside him snapped. His hand shifted, cupping the back of her neck. He pulled her forward roughly, his lips crashing onto hers. The kiss was nothing like she expected. It was fierce. Consuming. His mouth moved against hers with a hunger that stole her breath, his grip tightening as if he was afraid she would vanish if he let go. She gasped into him, her lips parting just enough for him to deepen it. His tongue brushed hers, coaxing, demanding. Her fingers curled into his shirt without thinking, clinging to him as though her body betrayed her will. 30 seconds of fire. Of breathless heat. Of a storm she had no control over. And then, she shoved him back. Breathless, lips swollen, eyes blazing, she pushed him off with all the strength in her body. Taehyun froze, stunned, his chest heaving, his lips still burning with her taste. "I thought I wasn't your type of meat," she spat, her voice dripping with scorn, perfectly mimicking the words he had once thrown at her like knives. His eyes widened. Kim Taehyun was left speechless. Beauty's chest rose and fell as she straightened her gown, her eyes cold and sharp. "Don't put your hands, or your lips, on me again." And with that, she turned her back on him, walking away with a defiance that cut deeper than any blade. Taehyun sat frozen, his mind reeling. No woman had ever dared push him away. No woman had ever kissed him and then left him wanting. But Beauty had. And the King of Shadows didn't know what to do with the fire she had just lit inside him. The private club was heavy with smoke, whiskey, and shadows. Minute J sat at the head of the long table, his eyes fixed on the photograph he had just slammed down. Beauty, radiant in an elegant black dress, standing proudly at Taehyun's side. His jaw tightened, his grip on the glass nearly shattering. 2 months, he muttered, venom in his voice. 2 months he has paraded her around as his wife. My woman. Mine. The men around him exchanged uneasy glances. One finally found the courage to speak. "Boss, the King of Shadows is not an easy man to touch." Minute J leaned forward, his eyes sharp and burning. "I don't need to touch him. I need to touch her." He outlined his plan with an unsettling calmness that made his men's blood run cold. He would not storm Taehyun's empire blindly, no. He would walk straight into the lion's den, into Taehyun's mansion, during one of his official gatherings. The ones where Taehyun met foreign allies, exchanging secrets and money behind closed doors. Minute J would make his offer there, in front of everyone. "I will buy her back," Minute J declared, lips curling into a cruel smile. "And if he refuses, I'll make him bleed for keeping what's mine." Silence hung in the room. Everyone knew this wasn't just business, it was obsession. And obsession was more dangerous than greed. That same night, miles away, Taehyun stirred awake to the sound of Beauty's voice trembling in her sleep. Her body twisted violently under the sheets, tears streaking down her cheeks. "No, please, Minute J, stop." Taehyun's chest tightened. For weeks, he had watched her struggle with these nightmares, refusing to admit how much it clawed at him. Tonight, he couldn't ignore it. He rose from his bed, crossed the room, and knelt beside her. "Beauty," he whispered, touching her shoulder carefully. "Wake up. It's just a dream." She jolted awake, gasping for air, panic wild in her eyes. Without thinking, he pulled her into his arms. Her small frame shook against his chest, her tears wetting his skin. "Shush, you're safe," he murmured, one hand stroking her hair, the other holding her tightly. "He can't touch you here. Not while I'm breathing." Her breathing steadied slowly, her trembling fading as she nestled against him. Within minutes, she drifted back into slumber, still clinging to him as though he was her only anchor. Taehyun sat there, unmoving, staring at her face. The woman who had fought him, insulted him, defied him. The woman who had somehow slipped past his walls. And in that stillness, the truth hit him like a gunshot. He wanted her. Not just as a possession, not as part of the twisted game he played with the world. He wanted her laughter, her fire, her stubbornness. He wanted all of her. His thumb brushed gently across her damp cheek, his voice dropping to a whisper no one else would ever hear. I've fallen for you, beauty. The city lights of Hong Kong blurred past the tinted car windows, but Taehun wasn't seeing them. He had been away from her for 3 weeks, a business trip he needed. He had told himself that distance would cure him, that if he stayed away from beauty, he would return to the man he used to be, cold, untouchable, immune to the weakness called love. But instead of liberation, he found chains. Every night after long meetings, his phone burned in his hand. Not to call her, never her. No. Instead, he found himself dialing the mansion chef. Did she eat dinner? He'd ask in a tone far too casual for a man who never repeated himself. At midnight, he would call the head housekeeper. Check her room, he'd order. Make sure she's not crying, not having nightmares. And during crucial business negotiations, moments when billions were on the table, his mind wandered. What was she doing? Was she laughing with someone? Was she thinking of him, or had she already forgotten he existed? 3 weeks felt like a lifetime. When his jet finally touched down in Seoul, it wasn't a relief he felt. It was dreadful. Because 3 months had slipped by since she signed the marriage contract, the exact duration of their contract. She had helped him secure multiple deals, married mafia, and also stole his heart. The deal was over. The marriage was over. She was supposed to be nothing more than a transaction, a pawn, a woman he would discard when time was up. The car ride from the airport to the mansion was silent. Even his men sensed the shift in his aura, colder, sharper, but unsettled. He entered his study before anyone else, loosened his tie, and pulled up his banking app. With one swift motion, he wired a staggering $50 million into her account. The price of her freedom. The price of his denial. He leaned back in his chair, eyes shutting briefly as he tried to convince himself. It's over. She'll leave. You'll forget her. On his desk, a pristine envelope lay waiting, the divorce papers. All that remained was their signatures. One stroke of ink, and Beauty would no longer be his wife. But as he picked up the pen, his chest tightened painfully. His hand trembled for the first time in years. Because the man who once ruled shadows without weakness now knew the truth. He didn't want to let her go. Not now. Not ever. The sound of the front door closing echoed in the mansion. Beauty froze at the top of the stairs, her heart hammering as the familiar footsteps grew closer. He was back. For 3 weeks she had told herself she didn't care, that she hated the silence, that she was glad not to see his cold, unreadable face. But the moment Taehun stepped into the hallway, tall and commanding in his dark suit, she couldn't stop herself. Before reason could catch up, she rushed forward and threw her arms around him. Her cheek pressed against his chest, his scent invading her senses, the faint musk of his cologne mixed with the crisp air of travel. For a second, it felt like home. Then realization struck. What was she doing? She immediately stepped back, her face flushed with embarrassment. But before she could escape, his strong arm circled her waist, pulling her back against his chest. Do you miss me? His voice was low, rough, almost vulnerable. Her breath hitched. She frowned, forcing a scoff. No. She tried to pull away again, but he didn't let her. His hand slid gently across her back, down her arm, then up to her neck. His thumb brushed her jawline as his eyes locked with hers, dark and unrelenting. Do you miss my lips on yours? His voice dropped into a husky whisper. My hands on your body. Her pulse skipped. His lips grazed her chin, featherlight, and her knees weakened. She tried to steady her breathing, tried to resist, but her body betrayed her, shivers rippled down her spine. He smirked slightly. Tonight, it was his turn to tease her. Her lips parted unconsciously, her eyes fluttering closed. And then, their mouths met. The kiss was nothing like before. Slow. Sensual. Exotic. Their bodies molded together. Her hand splayed across his chest, his arms pulling her deeper into him. Every touch was deliberate, every movement aching with desire they both had denied for too long. Her hips shifted slightly against him, her body begging for more. His mouth trailed down her neck, his lips tasting her skin as she gasped softly, gripping his shirt tighter. But just as the fire threatened to consume them, his phone rang, slicing the moment in half. They broke apart, breathless, trembling, eyes still locked in an electric haze. Taehun reached into his pocket, answering the call with a sharp tone, turning slightly away. Beauty, her chest rising and falling, tried to steady herself. That's when her gaze fell to the bed behind him. Her heart froze. There, sitting on the silk sheets, was a crisp envelope with divorce papers. And on the nightstand, her phone buzzed with a new alert. She picked it up with shaky hands. $50 million credited to your account. Her throat tightened. The man who just kissed her like she was his oxygen had already prepared to throw her away. Beauty's hands trembled as she stared at the divorce papers, the ink glaring back at her like betrayal written in black and white. Her chest ached, her throat burning with words she couldn't say. Without hesitation, she picked up the pen and scribbled her signature. The sound of the pen scratching against paper sliced through the silence like a knife. Taehun's eyes darkened. Do you really want this? Do you want me to sign it too? She swallowed hard, but her pride wrapped around her like armor. She said nothing. Instead, she placed the pen down with deliberate calmness and walked out of the room. Her silence was louder than any answer. Taehun's jaw clenched. Fury boiled inside him. A moment ago, she had melted in his arms, kissed him like he was her everything. And now, she chose her pride. With a growl of frustration, he snatched the papers, scribbled his signature angrily, and slammed the pen down. Fine. If that's what you want. But deep inside, his chest was burning. The last event before their contract ended was a grand gala in Seoul. Beauty walked in at his side, stunning in a fitted gown of delicate net material that shimmered with every step she took. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Cameras flashed. She was breathtaking. And she was no longer his. Taehun kept his composure, though his eyes followed her every move like a man obsessed. Hours passed in a blur of music and clinking glasses. Beauty, wanting to loosen up, picked up a crystal glass filled with a sparkling red liquid. She smiled lightly, thinking it was fruit wine. But the sharp burn that slid down her throat betrayed her. She had no tolerance for alcohol. Within minutes, her cheeks flushed, her words slurred, and she began laughing uncontrollably. Beauty, Taehun muttered, immediately catching on. He wrapped a protective arm around her waist and whisked her out of the party before anyone could notice her state. Back in the privacy of the suite, she stumbled into the room, giggling as she kicked off her heels. She twirled around clumsily, her gown sparkling under the chandelier. "You're so bossy," she teased, poking his chest. "Always telling me what to do." Taehun sighed, loosening his tie. "You're drunk." "I am," she admitted with a playful grin, "but I feel so free." She suddenly threw herself onto the bed, laughing, before rolling over to look at him with mischievous eyes. Then, without warning, she crawled toward him on the bed, her movements seductive in their carelessness. Her fingers brushed against his shirt buttons. "Beauty," his voice deepened, warning, but her lips silenced him with a fierce kiss. She pushed his jacket off, unbuttoned his shirt with shaky but determined hands, her lips trailing down his neck, her tongue teasing his ear. He groaned, his restraint snapping bit by bit. "Stop. You're drunk. You'll regret this in the morning." His words were heavy, his chest rising with effort to hold back. She pulled back slightly, her eyes half-lidded, voice husky. "Yes, I'm drunk. But I know what I want tonight, and it's you." Before he could argue, her mouth claimed his again, desperate and demanding. Taehun's resolve shattered. He grabbed her waist, pulling her against him as his lips crushed hers. The air grew hot, charged, wild. Clothes fell carelessly to the floor. Their kisses deepened into fire, their touches frantic, hungry. Every suppressed desire, every unsaid word exploded that night. And when their bodies finally intertwined, it was not just lust, it was war, it was surrender, it was everything they had been running from. They made love for hours, fiercely, desperately, as if the world would end with the sunrise. The mansion gleamed under golden chandeliers, its marble floors echoing with the voices of the world's most powerful men. Billionaires, politicians, and investors sat in polished seats, their eyes fixated on the grand auction unfolding before them. Taehun stood at the center, sharp in a tailored suit, commanding the room like a king. Rare art, priceless jewelry, and properties were being sold off for millions, each item raising the stakes of the night. But for Beauty, this wasn't just an auction. It was her last day in the mansion. Her luggage had already been packed. She was supposed to leave quietly, unseen. But fate had other plans. As she walked down the long hallway past the auction hall, a voice froze her in her tracks. "Stop." Her heart nearly stopped. Minute J. He rose from his seat at the front, his eyes glinting like a predator spotting prey. A wicked smile stretched across his lips as he looked her over. "Ah, there she is," he said, his voice sharp enough to slice through the room. The guests murmured, confused, turning to see the trembling woman at the entrance. Beauty's chest tightened. Fear rushed through her veins like ice water. Her legs threatened to give way beneath her. "Mr. Kang Taehun," Minute J's voice carried across the hall. "How much will she cost? I'll buy her at the highest price. Just name it." Gasps filled the room. Some men laughed uncomfortably, thinking it a joke. But Minute J wasn't joking. His devilish smile stayed fixed, his eyes locked on her like a man claiming his property. Beauty's world spun. Her breath quickened. No. Not again. Not him. Her mind screamed with memories, his fists slamming against her skin, his cruel words, the nights of punishment for daring to leave. She felt the phantom pain all over again, weakening her bones. Tears welled in her eyes. This time, she was truly alone. Taehun wasn't her husband anymore. He had signed the papers. He had given her freedom and a fortune. He had no responsibility toward her. None. She wasn't his problem. Her lips trembled. "I can't ask him to save me again, not after everything he's already done. I'm on my own now." But Taehun was already watching her. He didn't miss the way her hands shook. The silent tears running down her cheeks. The fear in her eyes. The guilt. He knew. He understood everything. His jaw clenched. Slowly, deliberately, he rose from his seat and strode toward Minute J. The air in the room shifted, thick with tension. "I won't be selling her," Taehun said, his voice low and sharp, cutting through the murmurs. "She's not a commodity." His eyes narrowed. "She's my wife." The room went dead silent. Minute J's smirk widened. "Wife? Don't fool yourself. She was mine long before she was yours. She's my girlfriend. She lost her way, but now I've found her again. And she's coming home with me." Beauty's knees buckled. Minute J's words were a death sentence. If she went with him, it would be the end of her. Taehun turned sharply to her, his dark eyes burning. "Has he been the one abusing you?" Her lips trembled. And then, with tears streaming freely, she nodded. The fury that filled Taehun's veins was volcanic. Without another word, he swung his fist and landed a crushing blow across Minute J's jaw. The crack echoed in the hall, silencing the entire crowd. Minute J flew backward, crashing onto the polished floor. Chaos erupted. Taehun's men surged forward instantly, dragging Minute J up and restraining him. "Lock him up. And beat him until he forgets his own name," Taehun ordered, his voice like steel. The audience watched in stunned silence. Some whispered in shock, others in admiration. No one dared interfere. Beauty stood frozen, her tears falling uncontrollably. But for the first time, they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of relief. Tears of gratitude. Her chest heaved as she looked at him. Her lips quivered into a shaky smile. For the first time in years, she felt safe. Truly safe. And it was because of him. Taehun turned, his eyes locking on her. His fist was still throbbing, but his only focus was the woman before him. The hall had quieted. The whispers and murmurs faded into the background as Beauty and Taehun's eyes locked across the room. Her lips trembled as she found her voice. "Thank you," she whispered. Taehun gave a small nod, his eyes softer than she'd ever seen them. But then, before anyone could breathe again, Beauty swayed. Her face turned pale, her body trembling as if her strength had been drained. "Beauty!" Taehun's voice thundered as she collapsed forward. He caught her before she hit the ground, cradling her against his chest. Panic ripped through him like wildfire. "Doctor! Call my doctor immediately," he barked, his voice echoing in the grand hall. One of his men rushed forward. "Sir, we should drive her to the hospital." No, Taehun's voice cracked with urgency. He held her tighter, his heart pounding. "She doesn't like hospitals. Tell my doctor to come here. Now." Later, in his room, Beauty lay on his bed, pale but peaceful. Taehun sat beside her, his hand clutching hers as though letting go would mean losing her forever. The door opened and the doctor stepped out, his face calm. "Mr. Kang," he said softly. "She's not ill. She's pregnant." For a moment, Taehun's world stopped. His heart skipped, then roared with joy he hadn't known he was capable of. Pregnant. With his child.
Their child.
A smile broke across his face, the kind of smile no one had ever seen from the infamous Taehun.
Thank you, doctor, he murmured.
His voice was hoarse, his throat tight with something dangerously close to tears. He hurried back inside, pulling his chair closer to the bed. He didn't take his eyes off her, even as she stirred. Slowly, Beauty's lashes fluttered open. Her eyes met his, confused and weak.
What happened? She whispered.
Taehun leaned forward, his hand cupping hers.
His lips trembled as he spoke.
You fainted, but the doctor said. He paused, his breath catching. Then he said it, his voice thick with emotion. Beauty, you're pregnant.
Her eyes widened.
Pregnant. Tears welled in her eyes, her lips parting in shock.
I
don't. Her voice broke as she clutched her stomach.
I'm carrying your child. Yes.
Taehun's voice was low but steady, full of awe. He reached forward, his forehead nearly touching hers.
Ours.
Our child. Her tears spilled freely. Overwhelmed, she covered her face with her trembling hands. Beauty, his voice shook as he pulled her hands away and pressed them against his chest. I have to tell you this. I can't hold it back anymore. His eyes locked onto hers with a raw intensity she'd never seen before.
I love you. I've loved you for a long time. You've broken through every wall I built around my heart. And now, with you and our child, I don't want to let go. Ever.
Her lips trembled as sobs escaped her throat. Taehun continued, his voice thick with emotion. I want to spend the rest of my life with you.
With our family.
Please, tell me I haven't lost you. Beauty's chest heaved, her tears rolling down her cheeks. She gripped his shirt tightly, searching his eyes. Her voice broke, but then her lips curved into the faintest, trembling smile.
I love you too, Taehun.
I tried to fight it, I tried to deny it, but I can't. I love you. The tears he had been holding back finally slipped from his eyes. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her hair, her temple, her trembling lips. You're mine, he whispered against her lips. Forever. Beauty was stubborn as ever, even with a growing glow of pregnancy. Taehun found her in the kitchen, standing on a small stool, trying to reach for a jar on the top shelf.
What are you doing? He barked. She jolted.
Getting the strawberry jam. You could have asked the staff.
He crossed his arms. She rolled her eyes.
I'm pregnant, not crippled. You're reckless. I'm independent. You're stubborn. And you love it, she smirked, hopping down with the jar in her hand. He groaned, pinching the bridge of his nose, but when she giggled and kissed his cheek smugly, his heart melted all over again. One evening, as they lay on the balcony watching the city lights, Taehun pulled her close and whispered.
You know, it's funny. Your name is Beauty. And me? I've always been called a beast.
Cold, heartless, ruthless. Beauty and the Beast. We should see that movie together this night. Beauty tilted her head and smiled. That's true. You are my beast. He smirked, pulling her closer. Then you'll be my beauty. Forever. She laughed softly, resting her head on his chest. My most handsome and loving beast. And for the first time in his life, Taehun felt complete. The end. I hope you enjoyed this story.